The battle shifts after the Civil Rights Act to the battle for voting rights. If black folks can't participate in the political process, they're never really going to gain any sort of equality. The Freedom Summer of 1964 is the first battle in this particular campaign. Thousands of civil rights activists flood the South, mostly going to Mississippi, attempting to register blacks and encouraging them to vote. Of course, black folks trying to vote would often just get told no, or would also often face violence from the whites. And the whites respond violently in this case. The first three to arrive, two white guys and a black guy, are murdered by a mob in Philadelphia, Mississippi. And in this mob, by the way, are the sheriff and many of the police of the town. And this becomes very controversial. You see here the accused in this case, and the people supporting them behind it. The court case is a joke. The town, with an all-white jury and a white judge, have no intention of convicting the people who did this crime. There's a great movie about this called Mississippi Burning. If you ever get a chance, you might check it out. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party rises in Mississippi as an alternative to the Dixiecrat-controlled, racist, regular Democratic Party of Mississippi. The party is led by a sharecropper named Fannie Lou Hamer. And they send delegates to the 1964 Democratic National Convention, claiming that they represent the Democrats in Mississippi. Martin Luther King and Lyndon Baines Johnson actually negotiate to try to get to allow the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party admitted to the convention as observers, with a promise of future reform about who gets to go, promising in the future the delegates from states with large black populations won't be all white. Many refuse this negotiation and walk out anyway. In my class, we'll look at this, but if you have a minute, you might pause it and read these quotes. They're really devastating from Fannie Lou Hamer, a sharecropper who gets herself involved in politics. In March of 1965, Martin Luther King marches to Selma in an attempt to register black voters to vote. The police attack him while the nation watches. Two white civil rights activists are killed, and the outrage leads to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, which is usually called the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Incidentally, conservatives right now, I don't know what's going to happen, it's April of 2012, are trying to get the Voting Rights Act of 1965 struck down. They're trying to get rid of it. But what it did, and what it still does as of now, is provide federal protection for voting for minorities. Elections, of course, are run by states, and so states could easily discriminate. But this would mean that the federal government will step in and prevent states from stopping people voting based on their race. After this victory, the movement shifts its focus to economics. In 1966, 69% of African Americans are urban. They live in the city. And only 55% of African Americans are in the South. Almost half are in the North. As the white economy booms, the minority economy is actually worsening. Half of non-whites live in poverty. And Southern resistance leads to the desegregation of the North. Civil rights leaders demand proof that blacks are being hired. They say it's not enough to say you will hire blacks. You have to show us black folks are being hired. And LBJ begins to support affirmative action programs to ensure that there's desegregation and employment. LBJ begins tying funds for government contracts to desegregation. So if you want any government money, if you want to build bombers for the Air Force, or if you want to build a highway, you have to show that you're actually hiring minorities. Martin Luther King, meanwhile, has moved on to protest of poverty. He protests in Chicago to highlight the jobs and housing discrimination in Chicago and how the poor live there. Whites respond violently, and we have a significant riot in Chicago. The media ignores this. They seem to be interested in the civil rights struggle, but not really interested in the struggle to end poverty. And Martin Luther King faces his first real significant failure.